Hey, board games, am I right? Let's go! Crowdfunding. And we're talking about, well, 2023. 2023. April, the look back, the hype, the where are they now? How do you feel about them now? Reviewing sort of a year ago in crowdfunding. And 2023, to be fair, was a rather good month for crowdfunding as a whole. You ready? Let's go right into it. Simon, white zombies, or Zombicide. The white side of Christmas, medieval side of things, if you will. And, you know, truth be told, going back to medieval in White Death here, sort of giving you the Game of Thrones vibe, right? From a Zombicide? It's kind of weird. At the same time, of the pre-second edition Zombicide, make the argument that that was by far and away both the most successful as well as the most well thought of. Arguably. Right? And it did rather well. Almost $4 million. Again, you can maybe say that that's a little bit of a downturn comparatively to your Marvels or your DCs subsequently. But it's more intriguing. It was the first one for me that I even had an inkling, a sniffing of interest in. But was it actually enough to get you in? 19,000 people thought so. Are you one of those 19,000? I mean, again, with Simon now going over to GameFound, you know, we can kind of see the comparisons going forward, because I'm assuming, although, you know what? Maybe we won't see a Zombicide this year. They kind of surprise us with that. So we'll kind of see where it goes, but because it's not yet, well, a year out at this point, because it's not even yet a year out at this point, you have absolutely no chance of getting your copy anytime soon. So you go back over here and you see the latest update being, well, plastic colors, which reminds me, I just saw the color copy, the production copy of Marvel United Multiverse. That looked freaking sweet. So, well, you've got colored miniatures. And to be fair, I like these colored miniatures. I like this so much better. Just a little smattering of color. So much better than the gray, ubiquitous ugliness that gets on tables nowadays. Now, May of 2024. A year later. What a joke, right? I mean, it's not even like you're trying to make a realistic sort of delivery date at this point, right? Ninja Turtles, right? That's what you got going on there, because I think they threw that in there as well. But that's all it really was. And so, production update here, though, mass production isn't going to be until May. So, right? As they say, right? Crowdfunding, 6 months overdue, always, at least, usually. Unless you're like Roxley. So, I mean, is this going to be any interest to you? Especially if you were like me and got in on zombies, or you went in on DC because of the IP value? Is this one going to fall between the cracks? Resale value for these still is through the freaking roof. But I have trouble getting the one played that I like the IP for, let alone the one I don't. And we're not going to get into the dead keep situation right now either. We're not going to get side tangent onto that. You know you want me to, but we're not going to. But I guess that's the question, right? How many more of these can they crank out? Well, the answer is as many as people still buy. Now, I'd be curious to know the dead keep numbers. I'd be really curious to know them. Which I think is also another interesting standpoint that they aren't showing us. No stretch goals. No fake stretch goals, that is. So I would love to see a comparison of how Zombicide does on GameFound. And I guess I say that, but at the same time, I don't think you're going to notice any noticeable difference, right? GameFound does fine for the big names. Does fine for them, for the most part. Doesn't have the Kickstarter walk-up presence, but it still gets plenty of attention because people go there looking for them explicitly in the first place. Which is sort of a situation when you're trying to get more people in than just the people who are looking for the product as well, right? Marketing, which we talked about earlier, right? Boom! As in launch. What else is next, though? Well, we had a couple other prolific ones. Endeavor Deep Sea. Big fan of this one. If you saw my review, I got to play it during the campaign, and I got to talk about the prototype. Really enamored by this game. I think this is going to be potentially one of the top 10 games of the year when it comes out. I didn't play the original Endeavor. I love the mechanistic approach of this. It's very intuitive. They did a great job overall with it. And so it's just going to be, again, were you a fan of picking it up deluxeified on crowdfunding or not? And it's kind of going to be a dark horse. They did this weird second campaign over on Kickstarter after the first one funded. And, you know, it got about $400,000, another $75,000 from the Kickstarter, and just added a bunch of content. So it's fine, I guess, right? It really is a nice weight, middling, under an hour and a half game. And I kind of liked the theme. I think it worked well as you're diving down these various layers, using the action selection system to place and then to spread and then to mitigate with the different columns as well. And the different drafting of your crew as you're going along and playing them in sort of a pattern building set collection-esque vaguely way. I was really, really enamored with this game. And again, you don't hear me always say this on this channel, right? Like, this is a good game. I enjoyed this game. This is a game that wholly gets my endorsement, right? Like, from the crowdfunding games from last year, this was one of the few that I was like, whoa, people are really going to like this one. So, Burnt Island Games, I think, personally, has a great game on their hands. The question is, though, right, like, just with movies as well. You see people's top 10 movies of the year, right? You know, like Ebert's, you know, top 10 movies, right? And then the top 10 movies that people just enjoyed at the cinema? I know I went with cinema, right? And those two things are not always equal. It's like when you go into Rotten Tomatoes, right? Like audience reviews and rankings versus critics. And sometimes, you know what? You don't go there for the most intellectually appealing, the intellectually stimulating movie that's a deep and dark and depressing. Sometimes you just want to blow them up, smash them, crash them, and go style of things. And I think this is a nice in-between that's going to have a lot of people really interested. And I think a couple bigger channels are probably at some point going to get their, you know, production copies, and they'll tell you, and then it'll spike and you'll see it. You heard it here first, right? Burnt Island Games. So you go back over to the game found page, production update. They got all the file feedback, nipping, tucking, mass production is pretty much all set to go. This was at the tail end of March, the 25th. So I don't actually know when the project was supposed to be delivered. Let's check this out here. May. So, yeah, well, okay. It'll be by the end of the year, but it's probably going to be a middle quarter 3. So it's going to be sort of right near that window of if you get it in like September, October, people will have it on their top 10 lists. You don't get it before November. Those games are sort of the in-betweens, as I talked about at the beginning of the year or the end of last year, where all the big people, because of the rush now to get their top 10 games out of the year, are pretty much done putting games on their list by the time November rolls around. So those games in the last 2 months always get caught in the middle and kind of also sometimes get left out, because by the time the next year's rolls around, it's already kind of been forgotten because of the hotness and hype cycle. But again, what do you think? This is one that I can't wait to get personally. So we'll see where it goes. And we'll see again how wrong I actually am. As someone who routinely tells you not to back stuff on crowdfunding, right? Haha. Because, you know, sometimes, as someone just told me in the comment section tonight before I was filming this, they said, hey, I have a local game store. I don't do crowdfunding anymore. I get the crowdfunding copies at my local game store for cheaper and for no shipping. And I was like, that's freaking sweet. But then I was also like, your game store is probably one of the only ones that does that, right? Because I know the local game stores around me charge MSRP and don't have half the crowdfunding stuff. And for good reason. I mean, I don't think there's a huge crowd locally where I am at from that aspect of things. But that is probably the exception rather than the rule. So, you know, again, it's fine for you if it works out like that, but I would argue that the vast majority of you that are watching are probably not falling under that category. And again, if you don't want to FOMO and want to see how it does first, well, then you pick it up from one of those and pay a slight premium. Okay, do you. Now this next one up though, Roxley. You know what, Roxley? Okay, Roxley, you got me on this one. I am I won't lie. I'm a little tempted by this one. This is one of the ones I'm kind of wondering if I made the right decision. I have said this many times in this channel. I like abstracts, right? You thought I was going to say something else there. But I can't get Santorini played. I love it. My wife does not. My wife and I are the abstract players. So that is... Oh, that's a board game shirt. Anyway... I can't help myself sometimes. That is the issue, though. Like, with Pantheon here and Riddle of the Sphinx, cooperative revision of the original. Redoing of the Golden Fleece, combining it, and going forward deluxeified. I don't know, because I have said, again, repeatedly in this channel, that I'm not a big puzzle person, right? Like, I like puzzles, but I don't like optimization, one solution way sort of games. And the cooperative mode kind of gave me that vibe. It's probably not. I'm totally wrong. But again, like, gut impressions, that's how I get myself in trouble on this channel, right? See ISS Vanguard, Mythic Battles Ragnarok, and Star Wars Unlimited, right? If you film yourself giving a gut reaction on YouTube about people's golden goose, they flip out on you in the comment section. Not that that actually happened or anything, right? Right. So you can still order it on BackerKit at the time of me filming this. Again, this is probably one of the most accessible abstracts there is, right? They put it on the page. They say, learn in 30 seconds. Miniatures. That's probably the other barrier, right? Is you have miniatures in a abstract game. And I also have to be a little trepidatious here, because just like I talked about with Robot Quest Arena the other week on the Roundup and the Don't Back It, right? Is that a $300 game for you? You know, sort of like with Roth as well from Chip Theory. Looks like a great game, an area control game for someone like myself who's not typically an area control gamer. But the deluxeified all-in version for Roth was like 3 times the base pledge for the gameplay version. That's insane. 300%, 200% extra for deluxeifications of a game. And on crowdfunding, I mean, you can maybe afford, like if I do Star Wars Unlimited, right? And I am really freaking enjoying Star Wars Unlimited. You guys are probably sick of me shoehorning it in, right? But I'm really enjoying it. And so like, I'm debating about doing the most horrible thing that I have said recently. Sleeving it. Anyway. Sorry, again, I can't help myself. But that, and picking up like little deluxeified tokens, or I actually saw some really cool Etsy playmats that people have designed. Like, again, I've talked about one thing and one thing alone on this channel. Playmats. Here's the playmat for Primal. That's the deluxeification that I feel like is justified in my collection right now. And so when I look at this and I go Santorini all in for 235 Canadian dollars, right? An abstract for $200. A 2-player abstract. Abstract, right? Key there, abstract. If I'm not focusing enough on the abstract for you, abstract. I like saying that word, actually. It's a kind of a cool word. I just need a t-shirt with that. I'm going to go to one of the board game t-shirt websites and see if they'll make me some t-shirts to sell for you guys on my coffee website as well. We'll get there. Anyway, that is the issue, right? When I look at Hive, when I look at Talk, when I look at this recently delivered Meridians from a Japanese designer abstract, look how small this is. This is an abstract, folks. Abstract meaning perfect information and minimalist approach for the most part. Now we've seen the rise of that, even with other games that I love, like actually Mythic Mischief down there. But there's something that stills my heart. I don't know, that's not really a good phrase. There is something that my heart really enjoys with those minimalistic components. Just something pure about it. And I look at this and I go, whew. Is that a game I'm going to love and get played for that amount of money? I mean, easier to play, right? But still worth it? I don't know. Probably not. Because again, this went wide retail the first time around when they deluxeified it and made it prettier. And it was cheaper, a lot cheaper. The component quality, I'll say, was kind of crap, to be frank. I have a copy still. Haven't been able to even get rid of it. No one wants to pick it up in the secondary market. And I think these look awesome. Don't get me wrong. The acrylic tokens, the turntable, the upgrade kit, right? Like, I think that looks awesome. But I don't think this is one of those games where I'm going to pay a premium for a product that's going to be easier to get to the table. Again, not saying that you can't do that. And I'm vocally a hypocrite all the time, right? You guys railed me over the comment section on the Star Wars Unlimited unboxing, right? Like when I said, you know, I could probably sell this and make my money back because I was having a little bit of buyer's remorse at that point. Now, again, I don't think people watched the very end of the video where I said, okay, I feel a little bit better, or the pinned comment on the comment section that said, hey, I'm actually really enjoying this and I don't regret it at all now. But that's kind of why I'm both interested in this, but also very trepidatious. So again, you go back over here, and Roxley, again, has the only other project they've backed lately in Skyrise, which is going to be coming shortly. And this did killer. Let's be clear about this, right? Abstract games are an incredibly niche, small market. 14,000 people, 2 million Canadian dollars. That's insane for abstracts. Insane. Let's talk about this, though. 66 Canadian dollars for the upgrade kit. So I want to do a little price comparison here. I believe it was 70 here. So that's not a horrible price upgrade in terms of that. And that's actually 50 bucks US. The co-op expansion, again, 49 US, 66 Canadian here. Riddle of the Sphinx cooperative expansion here for $70. So again, not a huge price point difference. They've just increased it by $2 or $3. So if you were on the fence like me, well, it's just a slight increase to FOMO, right? So you were supposed to get it in May, I believe, is what they also said on this page right here. May 2024. So 13 months later, go back to the updates. We have one sneak peek for scenarios here that was given at the end of March. And then at the beginning of the March, though, we had a little bit of progress. That progress puts us well into the fall again. Q4, though, oof. So yeah, you're talking 18 months. So anywhere between 4 to 6 months late from that aspect. So I'm imagining by the time of you viewing this, you're still going to be able to late pledge over on BackerKit. And Roxley has all their stuff available on their website just for more of a premium than the BackerKit's probably going to be later. I mean, all the Dice Throne stuff, almost all except for the promos, is available. And so you can get it that way if you want it packaged. But I also imagine just by the smashing retail success that this was in the first place, it'll see that wider market as well in the future. Then we're going back to Inside Up. Drafting right here. Earth Abundance coming later this month. Supposedly, if I get this video out before it actually, launches. And next up from them from last year, almost a year to the date, was Terminus. 3,000 backers. Almost 3,600 actually. And about $250,000, almost $250,000 raised. That's pretty good. Again, delivery date, about a year. Sort of giving you a train market economy vibe of a let's make a bus route, or on the underground is a slightly different twist. Slightly heavier twist on that, because Board Game Geek has it at a solid 3.5 right now. Building tracks and stations for your underground trains. This was a big unknown for me. And I think, again, they are a company that's putting out solid, but very spread, similar to Roxley, all over the place, mechanically, thematically, across the board. Pun, bad pun, dad pun. So, do you have interest in this one? I mean, they're definitely a company now, after the few hits of these for a couple $100,000, right? That almost everyone they launch, I'm going to have my eyes closely tuned to. And, as you can see here on the Vibe, you can still pre-order it at the top there. Late pledges are open. And it has an On the Underground look as a whole, right? With a little bit of the let's make a bus route style of things. So that's what you got to ask yourself. And again, like heavy, right? Like Lacerda on the front page, Man versus Meeple. I mean, this was a heavier game. Development, lobby, improved market. I have no idea on this one, folks. Like, this as a try before my buy for me personally all over it, because I'm worried, again, that 3.5 weight is pushing it in terms of my ability to strategically play well in any sense. So again, we said May, and they're actually relatively closer to fulfillment than a fair number of these other ones. As we go to the update here, again, end of March, well, it's almost going to be on time. That's not too bad. And that's kind of been their MO too, which is relatively refreshing as well. Fulfillment, end of May, beginning of June. Probably going to have your game end of June, July, early July-ish maybe. July 4, celebrate with Terminus. I don't know. We're going there. So yeah, then they link here to the Earth Abundance campaign as well. So out of curiosity, how many people following it does it have? That's a lot of people. 4,700. We'll see if that is the game to be all end all. April 22. Anyway, that's all I got. Side notes there. But I don't know about that one. That one's a huge unknown. I'm talking about Earth Abundance. I'm talking about Terminus, because just interesting to kind of see how they can do things out, right? Like I've got the drafting, you've got the spatial, you've got the tableau with Earth. You've got Terminus now with sort of the, grid train building. It's kind of cool to see. Again, which one's right for you though? And that's why I always say with these companies, right? Whether it's a Chip Theory or a Roxley, I don't endorse supporting a company just for sake of supporting a company, right? You're going to end up with a lot more games that aren't for you, like the Stonemaier Champions, or say even the Chip Theory Strategic Pledge, those where you're getting every single one. Well, I mean, it's less with the Strategic Pledge, you know what I'm talking about there though, in general. Like if you just get them, right? If you're the champion of Stonemaier and you just get every single one, they are different. And there's a good chance, because they are sometimes so different, that you're going to like one and love one, but they're also not going to like many of the others because they're not like the one that you liked in the first place. So then you're paying for stuff in advance, or paying for stuff that you're going off of the branding rather than what you're actually enjoying and being able to play as a consumer. Two different things there as a whole. But speaking of that, and speaking of, Ivy Studios, which we already did, Fractured Sky. Interesting twist. Again, from a company who puts out a lot of stuff and Deluxified, people are really liking this auction bidding sort of area control style game. And I told you you'd like it. Is it my favorite? No. You know what? I would say Veiled Fate, actually, with the expansion, actually jumps ahead of Fractured Sky for me now, as well as Mythic Mischief is still their best game for me out there, period. I'm intrigued by the Moon Rollers, if you will. Didn't get a chance to try that one, but I'd love to, in the future, kind of see how it does, because, again, that's kind of my wife's vibe, too. She really enjoys the roll and writes as a smaller barrier to entry learning wise, because that's her big thing, right? She doesn't want to sit there and listen to me explain rules for 10 minutes. She's like, you got 2 minutes, go. Right? So Fractured Sky, I mean, it's in the hands of backers right now, folks. 7.7 on Board Game Geek and Deluxified. So do you like those elements of things? Do you like the dynamic of only being able to put certain number combinations out there and how you rearrange them with the magnetic place face down? I think people do. 1 to 5 player, I would argue again, probably best at 3 to 5, probably best at 4 or 5. 5 is always a tough player count for me. I can't get 5 played regularly at all, so 4 is my still optimum here. And it's got the nice weight of the 2.4, which is perfect for getting to the table easy, because it's not a super long game either. That's my one criticism sometimes of Veiled Fate more than anything else is, it can just last a little longer, especially at higher player counts. So that's the question. Is it going to stand up the test of time? How is it going to compare to others? But Ivy Studio has really, put out a solid product. It may not be for you. You may not want to pay the premium, but I always see these Reddit comments that are like, they don't put out good games. They just make them look really like, no, there's some good games in there. There's some really good games in there. Again, good games for you. Again, I see this comment as well on Reddit all the time too. Like, oh, this year was a bad year for games. No, it wasn't. No. Get off your high horse. I kind of just buried the lead here. Guards of Atlantis II, right? Had a reprint with new content. And I said, this was one of my best games of 2021. This was, I think, number 2? Can't remember at this point. The hotness hype. It's also a game that I blatantly said repeatedly on my individual review, as well as my top 10 list, that's you shouldn't buy it. Because you're not going to get it played, because it's going to be hard to get played, and because you really optimally need 4 meta playing gamers routinely. Like a Root style, only with League of Legends vibe, and asymmetric characters, which have all freaking awesome powers. And so you don't need it. And the core was actually incredibly affordable, comparatively, from, a small indie designer who didn't go wide retail at all afterwards, and put out more content, which I bought and I didn't need any more of, because I'm never going to get played. It's going to be the equivalent, a miniature game, MOBA-esque equivalent of Millennium Blades for me. It's not going anywhere. Well, speaking of that, at the time of you watching this, Millennium Blade's campaign will be live, and sigh, it will end up in my house. So, how do you feel about it, though? Are you suckered in by this game? It's a tremendous game, you know, truth be told. And again, though, the barrier to entry on this one is where my hypocritical blind spot strikes true, because I just can't not have it at the same time. So it raised almost $1 million on the actual crowdfunding campaign. If you click back actually to where things are at now, when you get this, it raised almost an additional $200,000 in the pledge manager. You are backer number 1,700. Anyway, so the update, though, he does updates, the designer's updates at the very end of the month right now. So it gives you a little bit of vibe there. Artwork, gameplay being polished. Go over on Discord and check it out. They do stuff all the time on their Discord and online servers. And it's just in playtest mode. So if we go back over here and we check out when was it actually supposed to be delivered, well, it was supposed to be delivered in October. Well, you might still have it by October. You might. Kind of hard to say at this point. There's no update in terms of exactly where the production is here at the end of March, but that's not too bad as a whole, because this game, probably more so than anyone else on this list so far, requires balance, right? This is like a Spirit Island-esque balance type game. And they're looking at, well, potentially if you scroll down here, well, that's funny, actually. Fulfillment, question mark, question mark, question mark. So maybe by the end of the year. Okay. Yep. Well, that'd only be 2 or 3 months overdue, because they said October. So that's actually not too shabby. So how do you feel about that? Interested? Intrigued still? Blind spot like me? It's a great game. But again, great game for you. Great game for you. That's what you got to ask yourself every single freaking time. Weirdwood Manor. Weirdwood Manor. Speaking of hard co-ops that I played last year on this channel, again, like, actually, side note here, I never got to play the Endeavor cooperative mode. That's what I was really intrigued by, because, again, I think that'd be even better than the potential competitive. Anyway, back to Weirdwood. Talked about Weirdwood. Did Weirdwood. Did the video. Very impressed by it. Haven't seen nearly as many cooperative games so far this year on crowdfunding that have caught my eye. That one, Defenders, just all sorts of stuff last year. And so Weirdwood, as this very interesting, dynamic, Lazy Susan-esque spinning rooms vibe on the tabletop, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. It was a little heavier than I thought, but it, again, did really well on crowdfunding. And you're going to look at this and go, Chris, really well? Yeah, Grey Ridge Games, for an unknown 1 to 5 player co-op adventure game, getting, $400,000, folks? 5,000 backers? That's really good. Like, we get numb to the numbers sometimes, but, I just saw, $1,000 on a roll and write the other day that was basically like $5 pledges. That's impressive. That's impressive. Don't ever forget that. And last update here in the middle of March gives you a little update on where things are at as a whole. And, well, they're in the process of being delivered. So that's freaking good. And a bunch of people are anticipating this game to be getting to their tables this year. Because if we scroll back over here, it was supposed to be delivered in April. Right? Potentially freaking on time. Again, though, this is going to be a little bit longer. It's going to be a little bit more detailed. It's going to be a little bit more complex than your average pandemic-esque Defenders of the Wild style of cooperative game. And it's a little bit deluxeified. And it was, truth be told, more expensive than I expected, even for the standard edition pledge, $60. But I think it's a component thing. I think it's a deluxeified Ivy Studios thing, right? A little bit of higher production overall. Deluxeified with the standees. Did you need to get it on here? No, probably not. But is it one to have on your radar for this year? Probably. Look, I'm a simp. I'm biased for harder cooperative games in general. So I am not the bastion of unbiasedness here. I was trying to come up with another word off the top of my head there, and I couldn't come up with anything. So that's what you have to look at. Grow stronger, deal with monsters, and really have a good old get-go hard co-op battle. So that one, I'm going to be intrigued to see what the final dynamics are doing, because, again, probably not as heavy as Guard of Atlantis II in balance, There's going to be more randomness, some take that, and some luck that you're going to have to mitigate. But that's going to be sort of the make it or break it of how well that's done to put it in which echelon of cooperative games that you may be looking at as, well, keepers. So there you go. Now, Mindbug, the second one from Mindbug, Beyond Evolution and Beyond Eternity, launched as well a year ago. I just recently had my review come out for Battlefruit Kingdom, the latest one that's also launching later this month. Maybe live at the time of you guys watching this or not, depending on, again, when it airs. And when everything is overpowered, nothing is overpowered, essentially, is what you've got going on. And the strategy is really one of the most highly tactical games, despite the appearances of just take one action a turn and have two mind bugs that steal other people's creatures as they lay them down. You only have 3 life points. Make it worthwhile. Boom, go, bam. Is this latest one going to be better than the last one? I have no idea. Do you want one of them? Can you get any one of them? Go pick it up at retail first and try it out. But they put out a good product. It's a good game. It's a really good game. And this is all you need. You know, got 48 cards. Give 10 to each person. The other 28 aren't used. So you have a different set of things and combinations every single time. They're not all unique. There's some duplicates, but not a ton. And just play go, play go, play go. 2-3 games in 20 to 30 minutes. Boom, there you go. Done, boom, shakalaka. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm very happy with it on both sides of things. It gets a high recommendation for me as a whole. Thorgal. Thorgal from Portal. Well, Robinson Crusoe finally got delivered. Game found. Cooperative storybook adventure, Thorgal. Pledge manager still open. $373,000 raised. I don't know. Portal's been way behind on stuff with Robinson Crusoe, and this was their foray into the cooperative miniature realm of things. So how's that going to work out right now? How comfortable do you feel about that from a scenario-driven sort of campaign-esque storybook game? I mean, I think the hardest part for me now with a campaign like this, right, is over the last 1 to 3 years-ish, right? Very broad range there, Chris. Good job. Is that with these sort of storybook adventure games with scenarios, right? Or linked sessions or campaigns, whatever slight different adjective tabletop-wise you want to use, is that on surface value nowadays, I can't tell the differences. And the only way you're going to start to tell the differences is you're reading these 40 to 60 page rulebooks to kind of tell. Otherwise, you're gambling. Let's be truth here. You're gambling. I just don't know, because I have said repeatedly now, I am not as big of the narrative, right? The narrative just kind of loses me more so nowadays than it used to. I find myself not as intrigued by it. Now, I give them kudos because I love the spiral bound here. I love it. And it's due, about April, May for delivery. And the last update in February has these production copies, pre-production copies that look actually really good. So if they've got a few of the ways things are changing, I would imagine that you're going to, if I don't completely click over and screw this up again, have this, well, maybe 3 or 4 months. So that looks more like a finished product there than anything else. And that was February, so you're going to have almost 2 months beyond this at the time of me filming this. And you may get it close to on time then, because like I mentioned, right, April 2024. And the all-in wasn't terribly bad for that much content and miniature driven. Still feel weird saying that because you're probably still paying $200 for it. So that's the question now with a couple of these, like Dead Keep, that just someone told me in the comment section the other day, like, Dead Keep, don't worry, Chris, the expansion or the exclusive stuff is really just more miniatures and it's going to be like standees at retail. And I was like, standees at retail, did you say? Color me even more intrigued about the retail version instead now. So I don't know. This one could be a complete unknown as a whole, right? Complete wild card. It could be completely forgotten comparatively or surrounded by the giants of the cooperative driven Nereos campaign behemoths that are already present and before and after. Or it could be like the Tales of Red Dragon in here, which kind of came out of nowhere and has kind of gotten a relatively good acclaim for doing something slightly unique and slightly familiar. So I have no freaking clue. No freaking clue. Again, like I said, superficially, those elements and those words I said sound nice together. Which one is right for you, though? You're going to have to watch a lot of video to figure that one out. Let's talk about the last one up here. Not least, but potentially a little bit divisive because Teotihuican from Board and Dice came back to crowdfunding. The company came back to crowdfunding. The game, however, was a retail. It's like a Bezier situation here. The deluxe master set. People selling, again, copies that they bought on the retail to get the deluxified version to make it all match and fancy as a dice worker placement game. Transparency here. Surprise, for some of you probably, I owned Teotihuacan with an expansion. And I got rid of it. I didn't mind it, actually. But I said I don't love it. My wife didn't love it either, although she actually did pretty well the 2 times we played it. And that was the big issue, right? Is that with this, it was deluxified. You're adding a 5th player expansion. You're adding it all in one box with all of the promos. And for a deluxe Euro with all the content, I mean, 120 euros wasn't a horrible price. But this was one of those, again, that sort of reminded me of the Everdell situation, where people piecemealed each Everdell campaign and then felt a little bit disgruntled at the Everdell Complete Collection when it ended up being less, bundled together later. So early adopters, well, they didn't get the shaft. Let's not kid ourselves. They didn't. You got it early. You got plenty to play with and before everyone else. So if you were just going in at that point, you were getting it for the first time. But again, similarly, people, tried to sell their copies like rats off a scurrying, sinking ship so that they could buy this one to replace it immediately. So just gave me vibes of that. It's, as it says on the crowdfunding campaign page, beautiful to look at. Truth be told, it is beautiful to look at. But that's one of those things nowadays I'm starting to get a little bit more hypocritical nitpick on, right? 450 wooden components. 450. Holy cow. That's just a ton. And it'd be one of those games. I would probably put this out there. This is going to be more like the Puerto Rico from Awakened Realms, 1893, 1897, whatever the years. I can't remember. I'm bad with board game titles sometimes. And Castles of Burgundy Deluxe Special Edition, right? Where unless that is your lifestyle game, Castles of Burgundy, in that degree, just like this one, I think is going to be the same situation. It's not easily accessible, playable from that aspect, right? Like just the setup teardown is overhead-wise significantly increased, as much as this adds a significantly awesome table presence as well. Get all the stuff you're missing, make it look the prettiest game on your collection, and pay a ton of money. And again, are you willing to? Again, I don't think this was necessarily a bad amount for this comparatively for what we've seen Deluxe Euros with all the extra expansion promo content you're getting alongside of it and the Deluxified. So from that aspect, price point achieved. From this better be the Castles of Burgundy piece de resistance of your collection for you. That's what you got to ask yourself, though. And here at the middle of March, they said, okay, brief update. Mass production sample is going to be ready soon in middle of April. And they had predictions for the arrival going to be in October. That's probably decently accurate at this point, if this pre-production copy is halfway close. Because that still puts you pretty much 6 months out from when it's supposed to be. So if things looked really good in the middle of April, you might even get this one a touch early from them. Does that matter to you, though, anymore? Does it really matter, though? It's a free loan you've already given them, so it really shouldn't matter, right? Free loans, I went there. The sacred cow of crowdfunding. The one that people don't like to talk about. You're just giving money away. You could have it in the bank making interest. But then it wouldn't be so exciting, and you wouldn't get all the little update emails. Ooh, yeah! I told you, this was a relatively solid month last year. Though, the 2 years prior to this were a little bit all over the place. I'll be frank with you. 2023's list, I think, has more potential contenders for games that are going to last 2 or 3 years or more down the line than 2021's and 2022's overall speak. Liege prediction, Liege Stradamus there. I'm wrong. You know I'm wrong. You guys let me know all the time in the comment section. That's all I got. End of video, end of games covered, end of games look back. Which ones are you FOMOing, not FOMOing, regretting, anything else? How do you feel about these? You gonna pick up any of these now after we're at retail? Change your mind on any of them? Yeah? One or two. Always give me a little bit of second thoughts. And it's Pantheon for me this time. So there you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Thank you. Subscribe, thumb, like, up button. I don't know what buttons there are anymore. Just hit one. Hopefully that's semi-conducive, right? Do you. I'm done. Peace out. You're gonna end up a lot with. You're gonna end up a lot.